reached the appointed hour, give or take. So, good evening. It's Thursday, May 25th, 2017. This is the Scituate Planning Board hearing. We have an agenda that's been posted. Do we have a second for the agenda?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first on our list is a discussion with the Design Review Committee, but before we jump into that, a couple of quick comments. First, on the behalf of the Planning Board and the Planning Department staff, I wanted to send out a thank you to Reggie Wynn, who has decided to resign from the Planning Board. I'll say that we'll miss him, and we thank him for his time, his effort, and his commitment to the town of Scituate, and hope to see him again involved in another volunteer activity soon, and hope we'll continue to hear his voice in town. The second thing I'd like to do is just welcome Ben Bornstein to the Planning Board. Ben, as many of you know, was elected in our May 20th election. So Ben, welcome to the Planning Board. Thanks for your interest in the town, and we look forward to your expertise and your background in helping us take on our responsibilities and support the town of Scituate. So, with that, any comments?
No, I echo the sentiments exactly.
Great. Okay, why don't we move on to the Design Review Committee? And I'm going to turn it over to our august team down on the floor here.
Okay, I'll start out. Hal Stokes, Chairman of the Design Review Committee. Thank you for meeting with us tonight. We did not set a specific agenda, but we have been talking among ourselves about the need to come before you. As you know, we are a body that serves the Planning Board, and your request, we review designated properties for their compatibility within the general community of Scituate and so forth. And so we review signage, we review multifamily dwellings, we review commercial buildings and so forth.
And by the way, thank you very much for your effort in supporting us in that. We, as you know, we rely on the Design Review Committee to do a lot of the detailed work that I think, I'm speaking for myself anyway, I don't really have the expertise to do. So just our thanks from the Planning Board.
All right, well, you're welcome, thank you. One of our members is not here tonight. We are only three at the present time. But we have been talking amongst ourselves recently about whether we are providing the Planning Board with everything that you need from us, and we don't often have this opportunity to discuss procedural issues. But certain projects have come up of late that I think have caused us to ask. I know myself, I've talked to our members about certain projects that may come before us. We issue a set of guidelines that we think are the appropriate design principles and so forth. And then sometimes when we see the construction actually take place, it isn't always followed the way we've recommended. And I know that you have latitude with that. One example was the one on Ford Place that was just brought before us recently, just this past week, actually, right, because they hadn't conformed to their design plan. And I think you may have received our recommendations in our minutes from that meeting. But that was just one example of, as we talk among ourselves, what sort of teeth, if any, do we or the planning board combined have when we see things like this occur in the development process? And just thought maybe it would be wise to bring that up.
Well, I would say it's a great question. It's a question we've been asking ourselves here recently as a result of some of these more recent issues. And rest assured, we didn't give anybody the approval to change the design that was originally approved for Ford Place. We tend to find out about some of these things after the fact, where people are coming in and asking for forgiveness as opposed to permission. And it's why we sent it back to the Design Review Committee to figure out if there was a way to try to address what had already been built and get something close to what we had bargained for. So in that regard, we tend to be reactive as opposed to proactive on a lot of these things. We expect that when we issue a plan approval, that's what people are going to do. And oftentimes, I have to say, we don't really find out about it until somebody drives by and says, hey, what does that look like? What's happening there? And Ford Place is probably a perfect example. I think Richard drove by that one and said, what happened to the barn doors? And then as we looked harder, there were many other changes there. I wouldn't want that to deter you from doing the work that you do on these approvals. And, we may change some of those things in the planning board process as we go through, but at the end of the day, we're expecting that the site plan approval that we issue will be conformed with. And if somebody wants to change something, there is an avenue to come back here and ask for a change. And I guess we would encourage all of those who are involved to take advantage of that avenue of asking for a change before the change is made. Beyond that, I can't give you any other sort of guidance on that, other than we do look to the Design Review Committee to provide us the input on these particular kinds of projects. And I would say one other thing that we've recently discussed, which is that you tend to support others, like the Zoning Board of Appeals. And while we don't have jurisdiction in a ZBA hearing, if you will, we would very much like to know what's going on there and have the opportunity to provide our own comments to the ZBA on certain projects. I wouldn't say every single-family home, but developments, the most recent one on First Parish, we didn't really hear about that till actually the building permit had been issued. So we certainly don't want to be that late to the game on some of these kinds of developments, because we've seen a lot of them, and we think we can provide some useful input on that as well. So to the extent that you can stay in communication with us and with Laura, for as long as Laura's here, and let us know that those kinds of projects are underway, I think it would be helpful for us to get some kind of keep some kind of communication going on that regard.
Okay, thanks.
That's my kind of input, and I'll leave it to my colleagues.
I have the 750.1 applicability, and so, and Steve has already said, you do work for the Zoning Board of Appeals, you do work for the Planning Board, we appoint you. We need feedback from you, even if it's just a note to the chair. This is what we're looking at. If you have any concerns, whatever, with the zoning board, the next meeting is, and then one of us can show up. Because we don't always get, we can look through the Mariner and see what's coming. But it really would be fine. The bottom line, as Steve has said, it's about communication. And we are all working, I would like to think, for the same purpose, to ensure that what happens in this town benefits this town. So we just don't like to hear all of this stuff after the fact.
Right.
Because it makes life difficult for all of us. So if we can somehow figure out a way to stay on basically the same page. We don't always agree, but then again, we don't always disagree. And some of these things, if we can come to a meeting of the minds. But I think a lot of it goes back to Board of Appeals and what they're doing. So if you can just keep us
I think that,
informed.
yeah, and I would say the minutes that you sent out, particularly some of the discussion about the new signage and stuff, has been quite useful just to hear the conversation and the discussion around some of these new signs. And signage sometimes tends to get missed, and
Right, it does.
we really are looking to you to hopefully try to maintain the continuity on signage around town. And I know there will be conversations later about, the stuff for the public safety building and the middle school and all of that, but just your minutes from your last meeting, I think, has been very helpful.
Okay, yeah, those are definitely still to come before us. And John Roman,
I'm John Roman, I'm the secretary of the Design Review Committee, and one of my specialties is signage, graphic design. I've been teaching graphic design and illustration on the college level for 24 years, so I have a background in that. But one question I have regarding Ann's comment about the zoning board, I don't think anything has come before us directly from the zoning board as of yet. I've been on the board since 2014.
Didn't
So-
First Parish come directly to you?
I thought that had come to the planning board.
No.
No, we didn't find out about that
That
until
explains
Yes.
the
until the
problem.
building permit was issued.
Right.
That explains the problems. That was one of the things I was going to recommend that would be very helpful for the Design Review Committee, especially even for the planning board. I would recommend that when people present elevations of their new structures, that we also see in the elevation, the front elevations of any adjoining properties. Because if I had seen the First Parish
That's a good comment.
elevation in relation to 99 First Parish Road, I don't think I would have approved it. And I didn't see it until it had gone up, until it was built. But we had just a front elevation of the building with nothing left or right of it. And I think an elevation including the neighboring properties would have been very helpful.
So
that's something
when you say that, so we've got a site with a design elevation on it, are we talking about sort of just the adjacent properties, or is there a broader sort of bird's eye view we're looking at, or, I mean,
I
what
think-
is it because
Personally,
we also need to give developers some guidance on that as well.
Personally, I would be just concerned to see how this new structure looks next to the neighboring home. 2 or 3 houses down the road is not a factor. I think it's more important to see how does this new structure look in relation to this existing structure. And I think 99 First Parish Road, if I had seen it, if I had seen the scale of the new First Parish structure, I never would have approved it myself, and I think any of us would have. So that's a recommendation I'd like to add.
and if I could just, yes, we have talked that over, and we do have the latitude to create that requirement for the developer, don't we? To
Well,
ask them to...
The thing is, we end up with these buildings, whether it's 93, 97 First Parish Road, or wherever, that they are too big, and they don't necessarily fit into the neighborhood.
Right.
And so we end up with these, the average house, and then we have the humongous house. And pretty soon, it just changes the whole tenor of what we want.
But we couldn't tell that the building was too big, because we only had the elevation for the new building. But again, if that developer could have put in a drawing, just an elevation showing us the scale of 99 First Parish Road, nobody on the design review committee would have approved it.
Right.
They would have said, it's much too large, just as Ann is saying here, it's much too large. And so I think we need to see scale. Now, at 99, there's nothing to the left of it, but to the right of it, there's a home that does not fit in. The home doesn't fit in with what's existing. But so in a case like that, I'd say, show me the elevation of the home next door. If there are two houses next door, left and right, then show me both.
Right, but it's just, again, this happened unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, because it is too big, and it's too high, and it's too everything.
And too close to the road.
Right, and we're talking major superlatives here. So we have to make sure, through one manner or another, that this is not repeated. That, again, if something comes before ZBA, because they had to give them their special permit, their Section 6 finding, and that Section 6 allowed them to more than double the conformity. And that, in and of itself, I would think, would have been a red flag.
I was under the misunderstanding that all projects that came to the design review committee came through you guys.
No.
And that was,
Because right
That
here,
is,
So I just learned-
non-conforming
I learned that
uses are going to come through the
And we have,
ZBA, but
and there
again, I
are a
think-
few more coming up for us
Joy or
right now.
Rapture, and where are these located?
What's that?
Where are these located, the new ones that are coming before you?
Well, I have a feeling that the Proving Grounds is going to be
Well, that'll come through here.
Right.
that will come to you
Yes.
because of the size of it?
Yes.
Yeah, and one of the elements of review that we've been discussing is the architectural review. And we're actively looking at third-party consultants to support the board on that regard, and I would expect you guys to get involved in that review process, if you will.
We would like to be included in that.
Right. And we may actually need, and I won't speak for Laura, maybe Laura could add a little color to this, but one of the things that Horsley Witten doesn't do is that kind of architectural three-dimensional review. They tend to be two-dimensional. So we are going to need to find kind of an outside support consultant to support us in that regard, and you know, you might be able to help Laura as she's looking for that one.
Yeah, I've come up with one firm, which is Goody Clancy, which
Oh, yeah,
has
they're
a
very
really
good, yeah.
good reputation,
Uh-huh.
but I'm sure there are others out there. There's a couple like Cecil Group that was bought by a different company, and there have been a lot of changes there. I'm not sure, you know, where that would go, but if you have any information about any firms that could review architecture, that would be wonderful.
So two more recommendations I have, and that one has to do with the Proving Grounds. When we're dealing with a complex as large as that, personally, I would like, and I'm sure the Design Review Committee would also like to see scale models. Let's see a scale model of the entire complex. And going back to my first comment, in that scale model, show us the comparison of the scale of those new homes next to any adjoining properties, so we can compare the new structures to the existing structures. And the third thing I'd like to recommend is that, when possible, that we do on-site visits. I would like to, for First Parish Road, I know you weren't involved now, but I think if the Design Review Committee could have had an on-site visit to the property, looked at the blueprints, and we could have said at that point, this is too large, this isn't going to work, this is going to fit, but everything is done in an office environment, looking at blueprints, and you can't get a feel for the scale when we're confined to those parameters.
You know what?
Well,
Excuse me.
go ahead.
With all due respect, I don't think it could have been helped. You know, in the end, the foundation was in by the time
Yeah, I
it
know.
came to us. So I'm not sure that could have been.
I would just say on site visits, you're fully empowered to have whatever site visits you think you need.
Because we could-
Don't ask us.
We can have a site
Just
visit.
do what you need,
If we have a
right?
site visit, and it'd be under the open meeting law, have an
Yep.
open meeting at the site, and have the contractor, before he pours any foundations, where is the foundation going to be? Where is it going to be in relation to the sidewalk? Where is it going to be in relation to the next door neighbor? And we can tell just there in a three-dimensional you get a three-dimensional feel of how the scale of it will be in conjunction with the blueprints.
Well, we'll let you guys take the lead on that,
Okay.
okay?
Those are
I
my
mean, you can just
recommendations.
let us know there will be site visits, because we may actually want to attend, or somebody may want to attend. And I think Richard is the liaison to the
Yes.
Design Review Committee, and so he may attend,
I
so
bring this up, so I wasn't sure if that's a possibility, so I wanted to see if we could do that.
consider yourself empowered.
Right, we will. And we'll keep you informed.
Okay.
Okay.
It's one of the things that you guys do very well, and that is, before the application is being presented, or it's actually filed, is to come back, particularly like on Ford's that property down the Countryway, Greenbush.
Mhm.
I mean, you spend a lot of time looking at that. It's probably for you, Ann.
Well, it might be.
Which one was that again, Mr. Limbacher?
I'm at a meeting.
Talking about Ford Place.
Oh. No, I'm down in Greenbush?
Yes.
Oh, the Ford place?
Ford's place.
Oh,
Oh, the Greenbush Station, the condos.
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah, I think,
I think
where
that-
you can help, I'm sorry.
the one that wasn't built, you're talking about.
Oh, it's
What's under
built.
construction
That's
now.
okay.
Yeah.
That's,
You know what, I can't talk to you right now, I'll call you
I
back.
wasn't.
Come and take that, and the willingness to meet with the applicants before they actually formally file,
Sorry.
right, or at the front end of the process, that works out very well.
Missing something.
That's what I was going to say, so I think that's
Yeah.
right on point.
Now, do you all did they get a copy of the plans for the Proving Grounds?
Oh, I haven't seen
We
it yet.
haven't gotten copies for them yet. We don't have elevations of
I know we
any buildings
don't.
yet.
Right, it's just site
I
plans.
think when we get those, we'll be circulating them to DRC, Commission on Disability, I mean, there's
Right.
a number of...
Well, one of the things that occurred to me, having seen a schematic of what they want to do, and it's very similar to what we have at, out in the West End, Whitcomb Pines, and the same thing with Stenbeck. It's all garages.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I would like you to think in terms of beyond that, that we need a sense of community. I've just ordered a book called Small Houses, and they're all, sort of set up in green spaces and what have you. They can still, I'm sure, put in the same number of units, but it would be more conducive as a neighborhood, which is what we're looking for, a community, rather than you pull in the garage, you close the garage door, you go in your house, and no one sees anybody ever again.
Not only are they all garages, but every single building is lined up exactly the same
It's
way.
ridiculous.
It's the kind of thing that we should question early. Going back to the Proving Grounds, if we're
We'll
going...
get to that.
We will, we will.
We're not quite there yet, but
No.
we'll get to
I
that.
had a comment, but...
I note that, that we have people in the audience too, so let's see if there's any public comments, inputs. No? I think there was some discussion, some thought that there might be some discussion about the signage issue here, but given that, that they've sort of punted on it for a little bit, I'm assuming the next meeting will be discussing signage. You think that's where we're headed?
I think so. We're,
June 8th.
Waiting for a site plan waiver application on the school signs.
Uh-huh.
And on public safety, Tricia wanted to get some other material together and get the two chiefs together before the planning board looked at that sign. I think that sign isn't on as tight a time frame as the school sign.
But the school sign is on a tight time frame, right? So will there
Yeah.
be time for us to have our regular June meeting and address it there?
Well, you met with them last Thursday.
We did, right.
And I thought your comments were great, and you had them in the memo. So I think they're planning on coming to the planning board on June, I believe it's June 9th.
Yeah.
8th or
8th,
9th,
June 8th.
First planning board meeting in June, and Superintendent McCarthy had said that he felt like
June 8th? yeah.
their time clock required them to have the meeting with the planning board.
June
then.
8th, okay.
So maybe we can make it sort of a joint, discussion.
Don't forget 7-Eleven.
7-Eleven is coming
That's the
also.
same night.
Yep, they're also going to have a site plan waiver, which is coming to the planning board.
Okay.
Which also, I guess, raises some questions maybe for me and Karen. There are certain things when they come in that, I know you want to be notified of, but for instance, these signs, can we send those directly to design review and just let everyone on the planning board know that this sign is in front of design review? Or do you want all of these to go to you first and then?
How about at the same time?
Yeah, I would do a simultaneous distribution, so we don't hold up, the process of getting input from design review. But at the end of the day, we'll still have to make the final decision, so.
Okay,
But
great.
I think it would be fine if you just distributed them straight to them.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't thinking that they would be the only ones getting the material, but just, so they could get it and get going.
Yep.
Okay,
I
great.
think that sounds good to you guys?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that would be great if we had that
Yes.
opportunity.
I came tonight to get information about signage that I've heard some.
Can you
rumors.
just identify yourself?
Oh, yes, of course. Donna Banger, 108 Captain Pierce Road, Chairman of the Beautification Commission. And I wanted to get information about signage because I understand that there are plans, there could be plans to put some signs in some of the beautification islands. And I don't know if that's the case, but if it is being considered, I'd just like to ask that beautification be notified, informed of this, so we can tell our volunteers, because, these islands are designed and planted and maintained by citizens who volunteer their time, who put up with a lot of hardships and drought and hot weather and so on to make places attractive. And to go and find out that a hole has been dug, or two holes, or plants have been trampled, it just shows a lot of disrespect for the work they do. And I think we all have the same goal in mind, which is to make it attractive. And so I feel like it's only fair that we be informed and maybe be allowed to give some input, or at least be able to know what the plan is before we find out, before it's already happened. I heard you saying some similar things
Yeah.
there tonight.
Well, I think it's fair enough. I think, I guess I'm not aware of signs that are going into some of these islands, but that may be something underfoot. Do you know, are some of these Scituate signs going in there?
Laura?
Yeah, there's some pedestrian signs that we need to have a conversation about, some handicap accessibility issues, and I think that's the first conversation that needs to be held. And then if we, presumably we go ahead after that, there's been discussion about the island where you have the Welcome to Scituate Harbor sign, and then there's an island that it's very close to the harbor master's office. It doesn't look like one that has plantings at ground level. It's got a tree in it, but it's got grass at ground level. And then there's a third one, which is down near the entrance. It's opposite the Mountain One Bank, the new bank that took over, South Coastal Bank, I think it was previously, in that general area.
So you have plans to put signs, or you're just considering?
Well, I guess it would be considering, because it hasn't gone before the Board of Selectmen, and they're the ones who are going to make a final decision about it. So it hasn't gotten to that point yet. It's still in the planning stages. So I'm glad that you brought this up, and it was a good reminder to make sure that you're part of the process.
And would those signs be coming before the design review committee? The
Well, these are the
island signs?
standard, I think we talked a little bit about the branding signs and how it's really a standard logo, standard text, and so on. And these would just be saying Scituate Lighthouse that way, Harbor Master's Office that way. It would be that type of thing. And it would be that standard format with the lighthouse and the dory. and the blue and the white.
Right, so the signs have already
Yeah,
come
the-
before us, it's
yeah.
just placement at this point.
The lighthouse and the graphics is not an issue. What I'm thinking of is a good opportunity for the design review committee to go on site and see the islands and see what size is the sign going to be. And we would only be discussing it in terms of the scale of the sign in relation to the island. So, we wouldn't be changing the graphics on it, but I think it'd be good for us to be there on site to see an 8-foot sign as opposed to a 6-foot sign using those same graphics.
Sure.
So that would be an opportunity
I
for
mean,
them.
Ann's on the EDC, so, I mean.
Who has the lead with this? Is this the EDC?
Yes.
Who's putting this together?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's,
I would just like to, one more comment, is that all three of these locations that you have mentioned are beautification islands, and 2 of them have contracts with landscapers for designs to be implemented. So it'd be good to, be working on this together.
Yeah, definitely.
so Ann, can you make
Yes.
sure the EDC
Yes.
gets in touch with Donna?
I will.
Okay.
And perhaps
Great.
the landscapers could be there as well, if we were to have an on-site meeting.
We'll have everybody.
Okay.
We'll have a little,
We're going to need a police detail to
Yes.
block the streets.
and we'll
so
go from
everybody
one,
can
and we'll bring handicapped accessibility with us as well.
Well, tonight we were supposed to have an on-site meeting if it wasn't for the rain, but we were going to be reviewing the branding sign that was going to go on First Parish Road. We wanted to see if it was readable from across the street, if the type was large enough. So it's another example of that.
Great. I see we're kind of at the appointed hour here. I'll give you the last word, and then we're
The last word I wanted to say was, again, to the proving ground, is that it's a very sizable project, and I don't think budget's going to be a problem for that company, whoever they may be, to provide us with 3D scale model of the complex, including the terrain. I'd like to see the terrain, the structures, and any adjoining neighboring homes and their scale in relation to the new buildings going up.
Very good.
That's my request.
And thanks a lot, we have a clearer sense of how we can work together to
Yep.
all
No, thanks
be
for
on
coming
the
in.
same
I
page.
I think we'll just stay in communication, I think, as Ann suggested, is going to be the key here.
Okay, great.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. 8 o'clock. Looks like it's time to talk about Blanchard Farms again.
Oh, my.
Who's got the lead? Is that you, Greg?
Yes.
Okay.
So the update on Blanchard Farms, we were before you in early May, and you had set a deadline, I believe it was May 11th, to update some drainage calculations based on the as-built conditions out there, and to finish the site work that was on Lot 7. We had identified Lot 7 as being a major cause of the off-site flooding on Whittier Drive. The contractors on Lot 7 did complete the work for May 11th. We revised the calculations. We went out and did an as-built. As a result of that as-built, we found that the site was still not in compliance with our design plans. We asked the contractor to make some revisions to the site. They've made those revisions. As of last Thursday, the site was considered complete. My company went out again on Friday last week. We did additional survey work, and we just issued yesterday an as-built plan of that topography, and we've actually issued a certification saying that we believe the stormwater there is in compliance with the original design calculations and assumptions. We believe that the system is functioning as intended, in that it won't be causing off-site flooding anymore on the Whittier Drive. It did involve the construction of a swale along the back of Lot 7. Along the back of Lot 7, what we outlined in our report was that there was a natural swale that used to exist at that property. We included pictures of the contractor that had built Lot 7 placing a large stockpile of fill in that swale that acted as a dam. Drainage coming off of Lots 8, 9, and 10, would hit that dam and overtop. That has all been removed. The swale has been constructed. I haven't heard of any issues since the work's been done.
I'm sure we have people here tonight who can tell us if they've had issues, so. So why don't we do that before we move on to the conversation of the, kind of the rest of the stormwater here. Can some of the residents here give us any insight as to how things have been working here recently?
We haven't had any water.
Could you just identify yourself?
Frank Kelly, 34 Whittier.
Yep.
We haven't had any water since the work was done out back on the Hunters property.
And it seems like the swale is...
So far, so good.
Yeah.
It seems like,
Okay. We've had a couple of pretty sizable storms.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tonight could be another test, but
Good. Okay. How about Mr. Quinn, is he here? Yes.
Tom, I'm asking about if you've had any problem in the last couple of weeks with this work.
Just trying to see if this, this swale work has eliminated the flooding on your property as well?
I'd have to say I haven't had any water on my property, but we haven't had any significant rain.
Okay. So we've just received these calculations, and I think we're looking to go back to our engineers to have them reviewed. So, at this point, there's not a lot we're going to say about that, I think, at this point. The second piece of it, which was really the performance of the system, permanent, long-term performance of the entire system, not just the swale at Lot 7. Where do we stand on that?
Sure. We reran all of the calculations with the as-built detention basin volumes, the as-built elevations for the outfalls, the as-built driveway runoffs, the as-built roof areas that we've accumulated as each lot has been built out. And we provided those post-construction numbers to you. They're in tune with what was originally designed. I don't think we exceed any of the as-approved rates or volumes of runoff. So the system is functioning as intended.
And did you reconcile the drainage swale elevations with the third-party engineer who provided that data?
The third-party engineer, I believe, is Merrill Associates. I have not been in contact with
it
them.
was, Mr. Quinn had actually hired them, so, and we provide...
Hodge Water Resources.
What are they called?
Hodge Water Resources.
Hodge Water Resources, yeah.
I haven't had any correspondence with them, no.
You have the data.
I do have a copy of their letter.
I think it was a letter, and there was profiles.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you reconciled that?
I believe this swale the swale prevents, that letter primarily outlined that there was a high spot in the back of the Lot 7 property, and that high spot was causing runoff onto Whittier Drive. We acknowledge that. That high spot has been since removed with the construction of this swale.
That's not really what I'm speaking to. I think
Okay,
that
I'm
letter also
not understanding.
identified sort of the nature of the swale not being a swale that is designed to sort of run all of the water off, but using it as a natural swale. It had a lot of dips and dives in it from one end to the other. And so it had natural places where water would accumulate and potentially spill to other, to the adjacent properties. So that's one thing that I would like to make sure we get reconciled.
Okay, I can look into that.
Yeah. Because I really don't want to sign off on any sort of permanent stormwater solution here until we know we've really got taken care of, and that when the 20-year storm comes, we're not back at the same place again. That's sort of my input on it. To anybody on the board.
No, I think that's when we first saw it, that's what we decided we wanted to see.
Yeah, so we would like to see that fully sort of reconciled and make sure that this system is going to work, not just tonight, but
I ran the calculations for the 2, the 10, the 25, and 100-year storm events. It does show that it works based on what is as-built out there today. I mean, I'm going to defer to Merrill Associates, who's reviewing the calculations that we prepared, saying that it works. Merrill is currently reviewing the plans.
so are the as-built that we're talking about, the only as-built I saw were at the actual Lot 7. I'm talking about the entire length
Okay.
of the subdivision.
Okay, yeah, we had previously submitted as-bills for each of the individual lots as those were constructed. I mean, we can put all of those together onto one plan, but you do have in the town hall files as-bills for each of the individual lots along the
Okay.
back.
Will you
Is
put
it
those,
different now that you put the swale in back there?
Just on Lot 7, there was no work performed on lots 8, 9, or 10.
There wasn't any on Lot 8?
I thought there was.
Just right at the back corner of Lot 8, and that is shown on the as-built that we submitted this week. But the grading on Lot 8 itself, the majority of Lot 8,
I just meant where the swale,
just where the swale was, that was picked up on the as-built we submitted this week.
Well, I'd like you, if you would, put all those pieces together and then compare it to the
Approved.
the data that we got from Hodge, which I think attempted to do exactly the same thing.
Sure.
And let's make sure we get this resolved permanently so we can put it to bed. Anything else?
No.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to any comments from the public here. Yes.
Tom Quinn, one of the abutters on Whittier Drive. In the last 2 weeks on Lot 7, they've changed the topography, including or increasing the height and making the slope closer to the property line. And that doesn't seem to be in the approved plan.
On Lot 7, I think I just heard that you surveyed Lot 7 and you certified it to the plan.
We've certified to the plan in accordance with the special permit conditions, which are that it won't have a negative impact on the abutters.
But that's not what the plan calls for with the typography on the plans that were approved.
What in particular changed?
Sure, so the original plans for the subdivision, since then, the driveway location has changed, the house footprint itself has changed since the subdivision was approved.
No, I'm talking about in the last 2 weeks. Mr. Quinn said there's been a change, so I guess I'm trying to understand what the change was. Do we know? Can you tell me what that is?
Yes, Lot 8, I didn't bring the plans with me, but Lot 8 has gradations indicating what the elevations are coming down to the property line. And if you look at the approved plan for Lot 8, where the driveway ends, it slowly decreases to the left-hand side, separating property, Lot 8 from Lot 7. Now, if you look at the typography for Lot 7, it has the same gradations from the septic system, the leaching field, going down. Now they've connected those two hills to make a giant hill, which is approximately 67, 68 feet, the elevation. And that's not on the approved plan.
But this is something you've already surveyed?
It is something we surveyed. The approved plan did show grading between the lots, and what happened when Lot 8 was constructed, they had to reconcile the grades at the property line, so they sloped off the fill that they brought in and brought it down to what original grade was at the property line. Now that Lot 7 was constructed, there had to be grading across the lot line from 7 to 8. The purpose of that was to convey all of the water from the faces of the houses out to the street. If there wasn't grading across the property lines, what would happen is you'd get a collection of water at the property line, and it would be directed toward Mr. Quinn's property. You'd be creating a swale. So fill was brought in along the lot line. That is what is depicted on the original plans. What has existed up to this day is there was never enough fill brought in on Lot 7. Lot 7 was never appropriately graded. Lot 7 is graded appropriately today in accordance with the design plans.
So I'm still, did you get all that? So Lot 7 and Lot 8, you brought in fill and regraded so that they drain towards the street instead of towards the back property?
Correct.
And was that the original design?
Yes.
You want me to go and get the subdivision plan? Would that help?
Yeah, that might help, because
Excuse
is
me.
it over here?
Lot 7 to Lot 8 is like smooth across.
Yeah.
And up until this most recent grading, there was a swale here so that, water could go down this route, but that's not really a good thing to have.
Well, it looks like it's
permanently
designed to do
because-
that, though. 66, 64, 62, so water's going to go that way, right?
Yeah,
But she means there was channelized in the middle.
Yeah, but it's still going back, it's not going back towards the street.
Yeah, no, I don't know
Greg?
where the statement's coming from about it.
That's what the plans call for, and that's the gradations. And you can see, this is the original plan with the driveway in the front.
Yeah.
So this looks like it's graded, so it flows that way.
You're correct. What happens here is the front yards of this, and a line approximately from the face of each building, this was supposed to drain toward the front, at 69 down to 68 this way. We were creating a high point through here so that you had, from about my finger back, does drain toward the back of this property. From my finger forward is typically draining this way to the
It's all the
street
same.
or this way and getting into the drainage system. This is the sub-catchment line, or where that would be. When Lot 8 was constructed, this fill didn't occur between the two lot lines because they weren't constructed by the same contractor at the same time. And so these grades here stopped at the lot line, and as such, when this lot was being constructed, which is up until last week, they had to bring this fill in here. This here, as of the beginning of this month, was 3 or 4 feet lower than it was today. They had to bring this fill in so that we could physically create that delineation, which is the subcatchment delineation. Otherwise, this whole side yard up until this month drained to the back.
So it was flowing down this way.
It did, it was
Kind of
flowing
this
down
way.
that way. So, yes, significant fill was brought in here as intended on this plan, which was to direct it to the street or direct it to the drainage system.
Okay, and so the grading that we see here is what you've certified then?
Yeah, what also happened, Mr. Quinn points out, Lot 8 here, there was a side entrance driveway that was installed. This slope here does shift back on the property. The construction of the septic system was located here, and to reconcile the grading with the side entry garage and the septic on this property, none of the grading is closer than what was depicted here as the closest point, but it certainly is shifted back. That was reviewed when we reviewed the as-built for Lot 8 itself.
There was never an application to modify this. Throughout this entire development, there's changes made. You go back and do some calculations and you report back to the board that everything's fine. And I pointed out a year ago that everything wasn't fine. And these plans are what the board is looking at now. And you're just testifying that the grades are different.
Correct. What I presented to the board when this was approved was that, I Again, the board isn't approving individual lot grading, they're approving the roadway construction itself, because we don't know what the final footprints are at the time this was permitted. We don't know the final grades.
But this
That's
house
why
here-
the board included in their subdivision approval a condition that I must certify when it's done, that the grading on each of the individual lots maintained the drainage assumptions that we made with this. And that's the certification I've never made until this point.
Well, I raised the issue a long time ago, and I'm not here to argue with you. This Lot 7 has changed. A septic system and
Yes.
leaching field was put in, and on November 22nd, 2016, Mr. Hassett signed off on the permit.
For a septic system.
Right.
Correct.
And according to the certificate of action letter, paragraph 40, Town of Scituate is supposed to approve it to make sure no water runs off on abutters' properties. So you have a signature stamp, your engineering stamp on that plan, saying that no water would run onto my property.
That's not what that certification is, sir. The certification on that was a septic as-built for the Board of Health.
Well, if you look at the certificate of action letter, that says different.
Well, I think at this point, we have looked at the side entry. We have looked at the modifications of the grading. We now have what we think is final grading, right?
Yes, you do.
Which we'll review. And I don't know that there's anything else we can do at this juncture that's going to change anything until we get our own independent engineer's review. But at least I understand what your comment is now, and we'll just have to look at that. And I'm assuming you've incorporated the change in the grade into the new stormwater calculations, the adjustment in this grade, so that
We did.
the catchments are designed to handle all the water that's coming off of that and still maintain the integrity of the stormwater system. Okay. Laura, did you have something else?
Oh, yeah, but somebody from the public.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Oh, hi, sorry, Patrick Hunter, Lot 7. Just curious when this ends. Like, what's the end point here? Because, I mean, there seems to be no answer ever given, and...
Well, I think we're relatively close, right? We want to make sure that the stormwater system that has been designed is going to function not just tomorrow, but for the remainder of the existence of this subdivision. And, we do seem to have solved, at least on a temporary basis, the current flooding problem. And we want a reconciliation of this to make sure the system's going to function as designed. And I think that's our next step.
So just kind of devil's advocate here. This is the engineer, right?
Yes.
And he is certified that...
He's the engineer for the developer, right? We have our own independent engineer who's going to review his which is what we do all the time. And we've also had a third engineer by one of your neighbors present information that suggested that maybe the design needed to be looked at in a much more comprehensive fashion, particularly on the back lot line there. And so that's what we've asked Mr. Morse to do, is to reconcile the final design with the information provided by that engineer, and let's make sure we get it right. And when we get it right, then we'll be done.
Okay, so now what if this other engineer comes to a different conclusion than Mr. Morse has?
Well, then we'll make them put their two heads together and figure out the solution. All right? I mean, that's generally how we do it. Is that they'll review it, they'll have questions, they'll have a chance to talk to each other and figure out what the resolutions are. And if there's still a disagreement, then it'll come to us.
So this resolution would, earliest possible, would be the next meeting? Is that generally where it's...
Depends how long it takes Mr. Morse to get to his...
Again, I have all of the data, you have all of the data, so I will paste it together and you will have that in very short order. All of the as-built calculations are in your possession. There's no reason why Merrill cannot proceed with reviewing this project.
No, well, we just got your data.
You received the as-built calculations May 11th. The as-built topography was just this week, though.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So with all of that, we'll have Mayor will take a look at it, and we'll be ready to have them talk to you directly if there's any, disagreements. But I would still like you to look at the data that was provided by
Absolutely.
Hodge, to make sure that we're looking at a permanent solution here. Any other comments? Yes.
Terry Kelly, 34 Whittier. I just wanted to say this for the record, because it does have to do with the property behind us, should for some reason I can't be at the next meeting, and Laura's aware, when the property behind us began, the stone wall that we have behind us with a lot of the big boulders were knocked over. So I just want to make sure, because I don't want them putting in lawn, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we need to fix the Kelly's stone wall. So I just wanted that for the record, and you're aware of that.
And is the builder aware of that?
I know it's been mentioned. I think it's one of, a number of things that has to be addressed.
I know they're aware of it.
You got a hand in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, John Ray, K&E Construction, we are aware of that, and there are a number of sort of final finishing touches that will
Okay.
go on once we're sure that the major surgery is complete.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you in contact with the Kellys here then? I mean, in terms
I
of
am
coordination?
not, we're not at that phase, and at that point, when we do get there, then I'm happy to do that in conjunction with their wishes.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, yes, Laura?
I just was wondering if you wanted to request that Greg or Mr. Rain put together a timeline, assuming that we get the drainage calculations and all the drainage pieces approved at some point in the near future, what would the next steps be? And I think that might give everyone a little bit of encouragement, because one of the things that has to happen is that there has to be some vegetation put in on Lot 7.
Mhm.
The swale has to be vegetated, and the stones have to be put back. At least all those things have to happen. In addition, there have to be some plantings put in on Lot 7, because that was part of what was agreed upon when the accessory dwelling was approved. There are actually 30 plants that are supposed to be put in back there. So I think if there's a way for the Blanchard group, including the new owners, the engineer, the developer, to all participate somehow in putting a timeline together, that would be really helpful.
I think the timeline is the property owners and contractor
Well,
want to
have something
seed this.
Written down.
They-
Well, we can't come up with a
Exactly.
timeline until, we can't start any of that, or know when we can start that, until we receive confirmation back that the work is done, and then we can go on to that next step. It seems like we're sort
Well,
of
I'm always
open-ended.
hearing that, but I think if you assume that at the next planning board meeting, that everything was approved, just assume that for,
Okay.
in principle.
Okay.
Everyone else has been just very anxious about all of the things that are left hanging. And I
Sure,
think we'd
including us,
really
yeah.
like to know, the people on both sides of this, the homeowners on the Blanchard side and the homeowners on the Whittier side.
Yeah, we're very eager to get all that stuff all locked up and buttoned up, and get vegetation in, and get lawns sprayed, and, landscaping done, as obviously the hunters are. They've been, and part of Patrick's question there is, what's the end game with this whole thing, is that he's standing by and his property's largely unfinished, while week to week, it's process going to continue, meeting after meeting after meeting. And to his point, what point do disagreements between engineers ever get resolved in this process? At what point, where's the the line in the sand here, where we say, this is done, if all the engineers continue to disagree and then continue to point and counterpoint, we can't do any of this future work.
Well, I
take your point, but let's be real, this is not a disagreement among engineers. This is people's houses being flooded, okay? That's what created this situation, and we're going to try to get this right. We will do it as expeditiously as we can, but it's not a paper disagreement between people. It's real impacts to people. And I know it's real impacts to the owner of Lot 7 and Lot 8 and all of that as well.
If we could put, is there any way to put deadlines behind, the same way that there were deadlines put behind some of the work done on site? Are there deadlines that can be put behind the engineering review and the consensus to be reached between?
We'll have our engineering review for the next meeting. We'll be ready to go, all right? So I think as Ms. Harbottle has requested, let's have a game plan that says if we reach agreement at the next planning board meeting, then what happens when, and how long will it take? And who's prepared to put that list together? Is that something?
I'll work with the hunters on that because it's largely, they're responsible for landscaping. It's not in my contract, but there are clearly things that are in my contract that I'll need to work with them on to be able to make that happen. So it's a collaborative effort that
Okay.
I'll work with them on.
And you're just Lot 7?
Yes.
Okay. What about the other lots? Anything else? We've got any other planting, screening, swales, et cetera, that have to be vegetated?
Mr. Gillespie had said that there would be some plants in back of lot, I believe it's lot 8, on number 7 Blanchard Farm Lane. And I
We'll
think
need to get in touch
that
with him.
When we have this final approval, one of the things that, the board talked about was including a requirement for plantings at that point in time. Because, there's such a privacy issue between the two different developments, the Whittier Drive and the Blanchard.
Yeah, we'll have to reach out to
And
Mr.
it's
Gillespie.
worse because of the hill moving back. I mean, it's really significantly worse.
Sure.
Can I just bring up one more little thing?
Go ahead.
The town administrator went out to look at the grading. I don't know if you were aware of that.
No.
But her opinion was, and I had seen this same thing, but I don't know if the regrading changed it, that the swale, as you're going towards the stone trench down in the drainage parcel, that it actually had seemed to go uphill, but
It did, and that was one of the things that we had the contractor adjust. We noticed that, and there was a large puddle that formed there after one of the rainfall events. So they brought in some additional fill in the low spot, and they cut down a little bit in the high spot. That's what we picked up with our latest round of survey.
okay, because she went out there on Monday, which I think was after,
Okay.
so, yeah, I'm going to just go out there myself again.
Sure.
And
Sure. Gladly accompany you if you want me to shoot some grades with you. We're glad to do that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Good. So we're all set. You're going to develop the Lot 7 plan.
Yep.
You're going to talk to whoever needs to develop the Lot 8 plan, and we'll have that ready for the next meeting as well?
Well, I'll speak to Mr. Gillespie, the builder on Lot 8. Correct.
Okay. Would you relay?
I'll direct him to contact Laura and
Yes.
discuss the planting requirements.
Great.
Great, thank you. Yes?
Sorry, just one more question about the planting, vegetation. So, I mean, it's getting kind of late in the spring here, hot summer months going to be upon us soon. So if we plant things and we're unable to water them due to water restrictions and say all the plants die,
There are guarantees from most of the local gardening shops. We also might, we can talk about how to work that out, whether to hold back some money or what to do.
Okay.
There's more than
Be over, so.
certainly more than me involved with that, and there's the board, there's, neighbors. I think we need to work some kind of a good solution out, and I think we will.
It's too bad we couldn't store all our rainwater and reuse it. Okay, any other comments? All right,
I just have one question.
yes.
With all the discussion of the swale, Mr. Morse indicated that there was a natural swale. I was wondering if he could educate us as to where the natural swale was located prior to all the trampling and what have you, and now they've reconstructed the swale, and it seems to be in the no-cut buffer zone area. They removed a tree recently, and that seemed to be in the way of the swale.
Sure. In the calculations I submitted to you May 11th, in Appendix A of those, I included the pre-development conditions for the site. It included all of the topography at 1-foot contour intervals. I either highlighted or I pointed to the existing conditions swale. It was a very shallow swale. It was not a defined ditch by any means, but it certainly was a swale based on the topography that's in your records.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, let's, thank you all for coming. Let's see if we can bring this to a close. And we'll have it on the next, I think we are due to discuss this on the next meeting. Yep, June 8th, 9 o'clock. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to site plan administrative review. Endorse the site plan administrative review for 704 Country Way. Who's got that one?
Sure. For the applicant, Greg Morse, this was the common driveway that was approved at 700 and 704 Country Way in North Scituate. This was before the board, probably about a year ago. It came to our attention there's a conveyance happening at the property that a Mylar plan was never signed by the board and recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So we've prepared the Mylar plan for endorsement. You've already had your consulting engineer review, and it's already been constructed, but it's just time to sign the Mylar.
So it hasn't changed anyway?
No.
So this is not like an as-built plan then? What am I, I'm just trying to think about what we're signing.
This is the original.
This is the original plan, okay. And is there a need to issue as-bills?
Yeah, an as-built would be a
Okay,
standard.
but that's not what you're looking for here?
No, that's not what this is.
Okay. I don't know that we need to do anything there except sign, right, Laura?
Yeah, I'm just,
As part of
Have a motion?
Yes.
We do have a motion. Okay. Who's our motion reader? Here.
no.
Oh, you got it?
All right. I didn't put the endorsement of the Mylar because we were going back and forth about whether that had already been endorsed.
I'm jumping ahead of myself. Does anybody have any questions?
But we filed a vote with the town clerk that it was previously endorsed.
It was endorsed, yeah. Karen,
So why do we have,
Why do we
why do we
need a
have to do
motion?
this again?
this is, as I see it, you still need the common driveway agreement.
Mhm.
But I don't know what happened to the endorsed plan, because
It's not in our possession. Can we ask to get a new one re-endorsed? It's the same exact plan, a re-endorsement.
I don't see why not.
Do we need to even do this?
So we already signed it?
Yeah, there's a copy of the endorsed plan right
Yeah, we have a copy of it.
in the file right here.
We can give you a copy of our copy.
It has to be a Mylar to take to the registry, not a paper copy.
Didn't we give you the Mylar?
Somebody picked up the Mylar.
It was either someone from us or one of the applicants possibly.
Endorsed
Yeah.
December 1st.
Yeah. No one on the applicant's side has that in our possession that I'm aware of. We're asking for a new signature.
It's getting a little late to, if you got to June 1st, you might not be able to record it anymore. So you might as well get a little.
Yeah,
'cause, you know,
because it's 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to read this?
Yeah, well, this one has the thing on endorsing the
Fine,
Mylar.
okay. I don't have to read,
No.
No.
okay, thank you. I move that the planning board sign the agreement between the developer of the common driveway at 700-704 Country Way, the owners of the two lots sharing the common driveway, and the planning board, which requires maintenance and repair of the driveway and stormwater management system, the latter according to operation and maintenance plan approved by the planning board, and to endorse a Mylar prepared by Morse Engineering.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
Well, that's
Thank you.
that.
All right.
I have to tell you, the second house looks awesome.
I'm very happy with how that came out.
It's stunning.
The old house?
No, the new house.
Well, they both look awesome.
The old house-
interior
I thought the old house looked beautiful.
Stunning.
Is it okay to stop by and look?
Yes.
Thank you, I will.
Absolutely.
Great.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, review scope of services. We just got, right?
So, we got one, and then I got some comments from the health director, which were not very extensive. So,
Okay.
her writing is just nicely writing.
The record sign, I can take that tonight?
Yeah, they usually sign everything at the end.
Okay.
Can anybody pick it up tomorrow morning?
We have a closing at 8:30.
8:30? Oh, okay. You've been requested to sign this common driveway agreement because they had a closing at 8:30 in the morning on this.
I can wait. I would much prefer to be home.
Where's the Mylar?
Wouldn't we all?
Maybe I should have said it that way.
I don't know.
Take a 5-minute break and we'll sign and get back.
Thank you.
All right, we're on break. Okay, let's go back on the record here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're back to this scope document for the Seaside at Scituate review.
Yes.
Did you have some background on it?
Well, we had prepared a pretty extensive scope of services that came from the town that was going to Horsley Witten. We were asking them to give us a quote based on that. They kind of counter-moved with sending a scope which was similar in some ways, but had some pretty significant differences. In their environmental regulatory review, they don't talk about having an LSP involved. They don't talk about this method 2 and method 3 analysis for the, the actionable releases. They don't talk, well, they talk a little bit about looking at documentation, documented activities from submittals to Mass DEP, but it's a little bit lighter than, I think, than what the town had. The stormwater...
So will they take modifications to this and give us an update?
I think they should.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we spent a lot of time...
Are you prepared to edit this and send it back to them?
Yeah.
Okay. And so...
And also maybe have some conversation with them. They've been hard to track down. They're great scientists and they're a great firm, but they've just been hard to pin down to actually have a conversation, which I think is what we need to have.
So do you need some input from us?
Well, I guess I'm just looking for your support in doing that, because there's
we've got to
plenty
get
of
the whole
pressure
list.
going around on this thing.
But why is it sends up a red flag to me that you are unable to contact them, that they're difficult to reach. That bothers me tremendously.
Well, I can understand that, but I think it could also be a sign just that they're very busy and they're a very good firm. But
if they've
we're brand new and we've got a substantial amount of work here.
I understand that. And
they should be paying attention to us.
And if they're not, then we need to know right away.
Yeah, okay. I'll make a point of saying that to them.
Well, I think I would ask them, are they prepared to provide the support we need to do this, right? To do this scope of work as we modify it, or not. We really need to know that they're on board for the duration, right? So,
yeah.
But I'm also happy to give any comments. I think anybody who wants to give Laura comments on the scope they've provided, we'll do that as well, right?
Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to mention, as long as the principals are here, is that what they're proposing for a time frame is that they would have 21 days before a hearing to review material that we would send them. And that's pretty, pretty substantial time frame compared to what we've had with, at least with, Amory, to the extent that, we're still using Amory, but also Merrill. They're usually able to turn things around often in a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and they're asking for 3 weeks. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that, so there aren't any misunderstandings later. It doesn't seem unreasonable.
The scale of the work is what's driving that, but...
Presumably, yeah.
Yes?
If you guys wouldn't mind, I'm happy to respond to that just briefly. Jeff DeLisi, I'm here with Dave Buckley, and others. As far as the time frame is concerned, one of the issues that we're confronted with, for instance, is we're already within the 21-day time frame of the conservation hearing. I'm not sure the board is aware, but this scope of services and this engagement with Horsley Witten is also operating as the Conservation Commission's review of Horsley Witten.
Right.
The initial public hearing opened, I want to say about 3 weeks ago, for the Conservation Commission, and the continued public hearing would be about 2 or 3 weeks from now, June 7th. So our concern, and I think that was probably why the board had a nice showing here at the last hearing from the certain members of the Conservation Commission, is that there'd be some review from the standpoint of the notice of intent filing, the environmental issues, stormwater matters that are related to the Conservation Commission, and that review occur prior to the June 7th hearing. So my concern with the back and forth with Horsley Witten, I know the board wants to get it right, as it should, but I'd like the board perhaps to consider maybe seeing if this could be maybe bifurcated a bit so that we can get that review underway, so we can have some comments, and actually there's going to be a lot of abutters at this second public hearing with the commission, and they need to have something to talk about. So that's my initial concern with what Laura indicated. And then secondly, my question to the board is, what is the board considering as potentially the initial public hearing date on this? The filing of the application kicked off a statutory time frame under the special permit statute in the state, which I think is 60 days from the date of... 65 from the date of the filing. So the board ought to consider that in, this back and forth with Horsley Witten and or any of its others consultants that it might like to hire.
I think we're looking at least on our tentative schedules, July 13th as the initial date. That begs the question is, if we can get this resolved with Horsley Witten, do they have enough time to provide some initial input, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any, I don't know about anybody else here, but I wouldn't have any objection to releasing them for a limited, for the limited scope of work for the notice of intent. Or you could parse that out to, a separate consultant. I guess I would leave it to you to talk with Horsley Witten and whether they could provide the support for the Concom in kind of the time frame they need.
I think they're okay with doing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to be more efficient and have this all in one scope, but it's not necessarily working out that way.
Release them on tasks, right? So,
The only thing that it's a little bit different, but it's kind of related, is I think Concom and Planning had hoped to have the stormwater reviews kind of integrated together,
Mhm.
to have, like joint meetings of the two boards when stormwater was being discussed. And I think the first meeting on stormwater is supposed to be this one coming up in June. So, or could maybe that meeting be on wetlands resources without getting into the whole nuts and bolts of stormwater, which is also a big issue for the planning board?
I think that there'll probably be multiple dates of hearings, that hearing will in all likelihood be continued. We welcome a joint hearing on matters such as the environmental concerns that have been articulated or queried about, as well as the stormwater issue, that's fine. But
I think
we're
it's a
obviously
big
anxious to
benefit.
get it underway. Obviously, that aspect of it won't be, but certainly Horsley Witten would be able to look at the notice of intent issues that don't relate to stormwater for purposes of this next hearing. And, we just want to get a check over there so that they can get underway. They had a representative of Horsley Witten. I think the gentleman who was here at the last hearing was present at the conservation hearing. And my understanding is they already have, the Conservation Commission has forwarded them the application plans. So they've had these plans for a while now. That
doesn't mean they've looked at them, but.
Sure, I understand. And
They probably need to get somebody to pay the bill, right?
Yeah, we've been saying, where do we send and how much?
Yeah.
And
Well, why don't
here we are.
we try to do that? Why don't we, if you're going to talk to them tomorrow,
Yeah.
look at seeing if we can release them to do, the notice of intent, or while we work out the rest of the scope here.
Yeah, and I can just talk to Pat Gallivan and just tell him if
Yep.
he can set this all up and get it going.
That'd be wonderful. I greatly appreciate that. I'm just wondering, does the board anticipate that it's going to actually vote on this in its final form when it becomes in its final form, or is this just a phone call between the chairman and Laura to just authorize it to occur in the future? I'm obviously concerned about timing, even for
Well, I guess my thought on this is the sort of the base scope of work that we can release Horsley Witten to do. I fully expect that there are going to be changes as we go along, right? So we're going to have to be prepared to adjust as we go. So, I mean, I don't know that we necessarily need a vote for every change on every piece of the scope of work. I think what we need to do is make sure we have the resources to help us answer the questions we have. So.
And I might just make one observation to the board and leave it to the board to decide how it wants to handle that. I do notice that in the town's initial documentation a couple weeks ago, and in Horsley Witten's response, they talk about a review under the subdivision rules and regulations. And while there's certain criteria in this application that is applicable to matters involving such as stormwater issues involving the road and so forth, those are more general in nature, and I think the bylaw even uses the word general for purposes of this review. This review, I might remind the board, is not a subdivision. It's a special permit, and there are different criteria from the standpoint of what the required findings are. I know that the board has to vet that out, but I'm not sure that it's necessary for a full-blown review under the subdivision rules and regulations for purposes of this application.
And sort of go a little further with that then? Tell me what you really mean by that? Because obviously the the special permit for this component, for this project is in the subdivision, right? Is in the,
No, so subdivision rules and regulations were...
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the zoning regs. So you're
Yeah,
talking about the subdivision regs,
yeah.
okay.
So you have your subdivision rules and regulations, which are Chapter 41 of the Mass General Laws.
Right.
You have the zoning Act, which is Chapter 40. And the review for this project is under the Zoning Act and under the town zoning bylaws. And ultimately, and while the board definitely has the ability to address subdivision issues and issues that are raised by the rules and regulations of the subdivision rules and regulations of the town, ultimately, at the end of the day, the findings that the board has to make is the project in harmony with the general purposes of the bylaw and the requirements of the zoning act, that it will not have a greater detrimental impact on the neighborhood than a conventional plan, that it will be designed with due consideration for health and safety, and is superior to a conventional plan in preserving open space, minimizing environmental disruption, allowing for a more efficient provision of services. And the plan must meet the design standards and requirements set forth elsewhere in the bylaw, which does make a reference to subdivision rules and regs. I just think it's important for the board to keep that in mind as it's looking at the scope of services, for instance, for what it's worth.
Well, I would expect that we will use those subdivision rules and regulations as our guideposts, right? So I don't see sort of anything at cross purposes there. So, I mean, if it comes down, I guess I'm trying to understand where you're really going with this. Because, I would still expect to review this with the standards that have been developed in the subdivision rules and regulations as our guidance, right? So
I defer completely to the board in his wisdom on this issue. This particular project, the 70 acres of land, is the only land in the town of Scituate that's in this zoning district. This property was specifically zoned to allow for a residential cluster development of the type that's been provided. And I'm not suggesting to the board that subdivision standards don't apply. I guess I'm just wondering, I think that the board ought to, if perhaps it could be tighter, I suppose, with the review that it's asking Horsley Witten to provide with respect to subdivision. But in a sense, you look at the document, it doesn't, I think that the process is going to drive the review that the board asked for, I think. And this is, the way I view this is probably it's more general in scope, no doubt, but, and an estimate. But I'm just saying that we're all dealing with this zoning bylaw provision for the first time. And there's some latitude, all over the place here.
Right.
I think it's important for the board to just have that in its mind as it moves forward in the process.
Understood. Laura, did you have other comments about the scope?
The only, well, I did get some feedback from Conservation, which was that they felt that the things that they need are covered in the stormwater review and in the scope. We're working on the traffic consultant, and I asked both Steve and the DPW director for some input on that, and the choice came out to be Vaness. So that should take care of that. That's the one that Horsley Witten will partner with. Horsley Witten didn't have anybody who could do the fiscal analysis, so we'll have to look for someone to do that. And the planning board had wanted a third-party architectural peer review, and the firm that I came up with was Goody Clancy. I don't know if there are other firms. I was going to talk to the design review committee members to see if they had other firms that they recommended or that they thought highly of. I think that's where we are. The only, the other parts on the, on this scope that, came out different was on the environmental review, that there's not an LSP and
Yeah.
some of those other details. And
We should go back and
about
make sure
that.
that's incorporated.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments on scope here?
I had mentioned at some point, I think, about the possibility of having, I guess, as they did for the library and for the public safety, a clerk of the works that would just, is that part of this scope, that would keep track of everything that was going on so that in the end there were no surprises?
They didn't include anything. They did not include anything about inspections in this scope. So that's going to be another whole separate scope that's got to be done after this is approved.
Okay.
Yeah, I would expect as we go through that they will help us articulate kind of how to address those kinds of, the inspections, that we would end up with a plan out of all of this, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know that we need to ask them for that right now in this scope.
Yeah, I think, that can wait, but the idea of having someone out there every week, because it's going to be a big project, there's going to be a lot more going on than our typical subdivision, is a good idea. And, as much as they recommend, or as other towns do for similar-sized projects
I think it's important. I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, I agree with you.
What's the expected build-out time?
It really is. It will vary based on the market. So we build as we sell, but we anticipate in the 5 to 6 year time frame.
They'll be there for a while.
Yep. Plenty of chance for field trips.
Lots of ticks out there.
It's what?
Lots of ticks out there.
Yuck.
I think your chairman of the Conservation Commission might have had Lyme disease as a result of a field visit out there.
Really?
So we send a new guy.
Young legs.
There.
Yeah, I did have one comment on the scope of work, actually. Well, actually, a couple. One has already been said, though, about including the language of having an LSP review, because they're really the experts in risk assessment under the Massachusetts contingency plan, and it's pretty standard for these type of data reviews. And then the other thing that I kind of would like to see is Task 7, they talk about landscape and lighting review, and they bring up landscape architecture staff. I, in some ways, would like to see the landscape architecture staff also weigh in on the stormwater review. So that's not just kind of like, so that the design can maybe be a little bit more artful and more, have kind of like certain design principles and different perspective out front, rather than just being like heavy civil engineering, like the calculations are this and that, but have kind of like a multidisciplinary review of the stormwater plan. That would be my only critique, is to kind of have those people communicate with each other, the architecture side and design side with the engineering side.
Sounds like we could do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those were the elements you pointed out, Laura, were the ones that we'll still need to address. I don't know if you gentlemen were here during our meeting with the Design Review Committee, were you? I'd be interested in your reaction to a scale model.
Not very typical. We actually have what I think may even be, dare I say, a very cohesive and comprehensive, actually 3D animation, which is sort of the next generation of a 3D model, which is a fly-through of the whole community developed and built in the computer, so you can actually put yourself into the project itself with the architecture fully drawn in the computer, color rendered, textured, trees, precisely what the whole community will look like, which we will be coming to show you as well. So I think that may serve the purpose or the design intent or the ultimate goal that they were looking for. I know 3D models are a little bit more what used to be done before. Now we have the technology to do these sort of really comprehensive fly-throughs. They're fantastic. I think
Will
they
it
would be
capture
very happy when they see that?
Will it capture the edge effects with the existing neighborhoods, so you can see the transition from?
So I mean, right now in that case, we haven't built 3D models of neighboring houses, for example. We have, in the computer animation we have right now, we have the existing edge of woodland line, an undisturbed woodland line in the model. So that is in there. So you can get a sense of the vegetative buffer, you can get a sense of landscape, to a certain degree, landscape design, how the entry feature will look and feel, and colors and walls and textures and roadways and scale in that regards. So we have some of that, I guess you can say, in the model itself.
You know, what I was thinking as I was hearing or observing that discussion was I was putting myself in, I'm thinking, you know, to have a 3D model, for instance, for this particular development almost wouldn't even serve the purpose in my estimation, because the zoning bylaws have setbacks, perimeter setbacks, for instance, from, you know, all property lines that are kind of different than the rest of the zoning bylaw. And then you also have open space issues, open space requirements. So to put, you know, a dwelling unit of a certain height you know, next to dwelling units all of the same general certain height is going to tell you that the scale, when compared to one another, is pretty uniform. It's a question of how it is in relation to the surrounding neighborhood, and it's set back. These will be set back so far that it's almost as if, you know, comparing scale like massing and so forth with the neighborhood around it might be almost a fruitless effort in a sense. It might not really give much information.
Well, it seems to me that the 3D model might actually be useful. I guess I would, Laura, if you would sort of pass that on back to the Design Review Committee and let them think about that a little bit. I'd be interested in their thoughts on that.
Computer modeling.
Yeah. And then maybe the edge effects too, right? Particularly along Hadley Road. And then there's an entrance.
Yeah, so
there's a secondary edge.
Along Hadley, part of the project, in the design, there are the 7 single-family lots right on Hadley across the street. So we actually have those built into the model as well.
7?
There's 7 right along the road itself.
But it's 10 single-family homes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's 3 that are off of Hadley, if you will, not right along the main road itself. But there is 10 in the plan itself, or proposal, I should say. But we have those built in the computer, so you can actually get a sense of those, and even the view out into the ocean beyond that as well. And that's more for design purposes.
But those lots actually are designed to meet the criteria of the zoning district in which they're in, almost as if they're A&R lots, right? So just keep that in mind as well. I mean, normally you wouldn't have a design review of an A&R.
Yeah, but normally you wouldn't be looking to build something this big either, so.
I
Yeah.
get it, but I'm just,
We're going to try to look at this sort of comprehensively, not piece by piece.
And since you sat through design review, I'd like you to think about, seriously, not having garages and doors on the street that make it more of a neighborhood. I mean, it's something I want you to think about.
I'll tell you, yeah, I mean.
I want you to think about
I'm
it.
going to ask him not to respond to that. Well,
That's fine.
yeah, I appreciate your comment, Ann. We'll
All right.
talk about it.
We will talk about it.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay, so Laura, you'll circle back with Horsley Witten and see if we can release the NOI stuff and
Yeah.
then get an updated,
Then I guess we'll go back and forth about the other.
yeah, we can get the final scope and then just try to get them on board and moving too.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
So Laura, I'll hear from you tomorrow about how much and to send over to them.
Well, I'm not anticipating I'm going to have this all worked out tomorrow, but I will try, and I'll certainly be talking to Pat about the conservation part. I think we can get that worked out tomorrow. But all
The rest of it may take.
That's what I
may
meant,
take another
conservation.
day or two. Oh, yeah, I don't think it's that problem at all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on. Have a little housekeeping to take care of, I guess, huh? I think somehow we need to officially declare a vacant spot, right? Is there a motion?
It's a motion in your packet, everybody's packet.
Yeah, here it is.
And there are a couple of options to think about, because the first conversation that we had about this vacancy was with Kathy Curran, the town clerk, and she suggested there were two possibilities. One was that you appoint the new alternate member, do the joint appointment with the selectmen, and that would be something that could be done right away. The person would have to run for the whole shooting match of the term on the September 16th ballot, on the special ballot. Or alternatively to that, you could just wait until September 16th, but with such a big development in front of you and all the other things and other people's travel plans, you know which way I'm going with this, but it's your decision.
Well, by the time we get around to the selectmen, it's going to be sometime toward the end of June. So...
Well, we could send something, to the selectmen tomorrow, and then, I think...
Don't we need to ask for interest on this?
Well, that's the thing, is you would typically run something in the newspaper, ask all your friends who have the right background, if they're interested, anybody else who has the right background that you know, if you think they're interested. But sometimes the appointment is a good way to get someone with the right credentials. Not always, but...
But then you're
You have a
banking on the
little
fact that person's going to get elected in
Right.
September.
That's right.
No, yeah, you'd have to pick someone who's really into it, who's going to do the campaigning.
Well, an alternate seat is not the hot seat in town.
I know that.
It really isn't the hot seat in town. And I guess you did talk to Kathy Curran about this. In the past, Is it because there is a special election on the 16th that it would be included? Because then this poor soul would have to run yet again in May of the following year.
He runs for 2 elections.
He runs for 2 elections in short order.
Yeah,
And then he'd have to run yet again.
well, 3 years after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me find out about that.
Please.
Because I'm not sure whoever gets Marty O'Toole's seat is going to have to run again.
Yes, they are.
They are?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
they are. To finish
I would
out-
say if they run next May, then it would be worth our while to get an alternate appointed now,
Right.
right?
I think the appointment is until the next election, so I think that would be in September. I don't think there's any way we'll avoid the two elections.
Excuse me?
Situation.
Never again.
Until the next town meeting election, or town election,
No,
or special election?
Town election, which apparently includes special elections.
My understanding is that you appoint him, they'd run in September, and then they'd have to run in the following.
Yes, they
following
would.
spring.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I think if you came back and you appointed it, probably the date trail realistically is probably August before you got somebody there.
Could be.
I think you're probably right.
Because you're going to have to advertise it for a reasonable period of time, then you have to interview
Couple
a
weeks.
throng of people that'll come in.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to both of them.
Or one.
Throng.
We'll have a whole herd in here.
So I think you have to decide what's your pleasure and which do you want.
I think I'd be more inclined just to let him run for the election
Yep.
on the 16th,
Yep.
in September, myself. It's going to be such a process just to get appointed, and in fact, I'll actually have to start running before we might even appoint them.
There you go.
Right. So,
All right.
I mean, that would be my thought. What do you guys think? I mean, it'd be nice to have an alternate, but I'm just thinking about the process of getting one.
Nobody on the planning board, I don't know where Richard lives, I mean, nobody's a
butter
to this particular project.
Or within 300 feet?
Yeah.
No,
No.
No.
way across town. All right, do you want me to read this motion? I move to declare the alternate planning board member position vacant and to request the Board of Selectmen put the position on the September 16th election ballot.
I'll second that.
Second that. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, that's done. All right.
Next on our list, reorganization of the planning board.
Okay.
So we'll all stand up and move a chair.
Move a chair. I would nominate Steve Pritchard to continue as chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been nominated second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I nominate Ann for vice chair?
So you're not interested?
No. Ann's much younger than I am, a lot more energy.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I nominate Ben as clerk.
Second.
Third.
All those in favor?
You have a nice voice, and we need one.
Okay.
You get to be the reader.
All right.
Sorry, I'll go do those documents out.
Okay.
Be right back.
Right.
Okay.
Accounting.
Do we have any accounting?
Yes, there was a thing right here. Where'd it go?
Oh, it's right here.
Well, she took it.
There.
Thank you.
She was adding a little something
You
in
may
it for
want to
you.
reconsider. Vice chair's disorganized here.
Oh, I have to go, it has to go to him. You're now the person.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do it one more time.
Okay.
when we're done.
This will be your swan song.
This is it. I move to approve the requisition of $225 to Tracy Sales for toner for the large format printer, for $220.97 to J&R Graphics for envelopes and tickets, for planning board fines, and for $1,820 to Merrill Corporation for engineering peer review for 4 Union Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Consider unpaid. Minutes? Do we have any minutes?
Excuse me, Ben, do you want your middle initial as part of your official signature?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Nothing in the minutes folder.
Okay, done with that. Liaison reports. Anything new?
Just trying to think of, we had a wonderful, wonderful program last Saturday. EDC did.
Could I stop you for a minute? I'm sorry, I meant to, because Ben's new here.
All right.
There's
I
a
didn't
list.
ask about that.
There's
Yeah.
a list called liaison reports, and there's usually somebody assigned to be a liaison to different boards in town. And as you can see, Reggie was handling the ZBA, which we would happily put your name under if you want to do that.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that.
But then we have a standing agenda item that addresses any reports from any liaison, any meetings you may have gone to that are part of your liaison responsibilities. So, I'm sorry, Ann.
The other thing you need to think about in terms of liaison positions is Social Coalition. And I've been the selectman's rep for Social Coalition for over 20 years, and I have to tell you, it's time.
You've had it?
I have had it.
Well, why do we have Richard on that list?
Well, Richard doesn't go,
Ah,
so I don't know what to do. Let's hold that in abeyance.
okay.
All right?
Why don't we go through the list when Richard's here,
Yes.
right?
Excellent.
And so we've got everybody and we can just walk through it. But in the meantime, any updates from anything?
We had a visioning of Greenbush on Saturday. It was very well attended.
I heard it was good.
It was
Yeah.
excellent. And Ted and his sidekick, what's his name?
Peter.
Peter, did a tremendous job, and all of the EDC people showed. It was excellent. So they're putting together a final report, which we will have and disseminate. And then the other thing that I think we will do is, in the fall, put together the same program, but for North Scituate. Because the more people we can involve, the more input we get, the easier it is to bring about positive change. Because all too often, we end up reacting to things rather than as being proactive. So this is something that is going to take a good number of years to implement, and change comes about very slowly, but we want to be prepared for it. Rather than they're telling us what to do, we want to have a plan.
Speaking of plans, that's, I think, one of the things we're going to have to tackle
Yes.
is developing a plan to update the master plan, right? And integrate what EDC is doing into that plan, so. But I think we plan to start that next fiscal year, so.
Yes.
Maybe we'll bring you out of retirement and you can lead that.
Okay, and what else?
Okay,
That's it.
town planner report?
Couple of things. I wanted to just let everyone know that I met with the Quinns and with Tricia on Friday, and I think it was productive. And then Tricia made a site visit, and I think there's a lot of things that came up, but I think I've talked about it with Steve, and I don't know if you want to jump in at some point, but we're looking at ways to try to prevent what happened there from happening ever again, ideally. And we're really looking at what happens when you start to build out a subdivision and what kinds of circumstances lead to things that are going to impact neighbors. So, we were...
Yeah, I think the idea was, to sort of take it a bit as, there were things that kind of fall into the category of lessons learned, and, what did we learn from that, and what ought we change going forward for any new subdivisions that we're doing. And, in particular, what occurs to me is this disconnect we have between the developer of the subdivision and the individual builders is one we've got to get sorted out so that we don't end up with what we ended up with, right?
Yeah.
And then the other disconnect is that when we've approved the subdivision, generally the driveways and the houses are sort of spec, if you will, right? They're not, that's exactly what's going to be built, right? And so, but then when something changes, people look to the drawing and say, well, it's not exactly what, it's not the same footprint that was on the drawing, and not the same elevation, and all those other kinds of things. And we need to find a way to sort of address that in the upfront approval so that we provide some flexibility, but also provide some accountability
Places.
for changes.
Pass them all down.
So that would seem to me to be the, kind of a couple of the lessons learned here. And then obviously, we don't want certificate of occupancies sort of issued if we haven't gotten through some of the key elements of approval, right? Including the certification of the grade and stuff like that.
Actually, that was a big development this week that was very gratifying, was after going through, a lot of discussion, with Lot 7 and everything that happened over there. The last thing that happened on the C of Os was I had been told that it had to come before the development review team, and it had to be discussed by multiple department heads and go through a process and so on. Well, that all changed, and the memo came down to the building department that from here on, both planning and conservation are going to get to sign off on the C of Os. So
that's good.
I am very happy.
That's excellent. That's excellent. It's about time.
Yeah.
And so we won't be
Yeah.
caught again.
Right.
Yeah. And any accessory dwelling where there's supposed to be plantings, at least we'll get money set aside. If there's grading, things like those roof dry wells that just took months and months of, it was basically 6 months of trying to work with the contractor, and we had no leverage.
Well, we have to figure out not only just the leverage for the CO, we also have to think about giving these characters a date certain, and if they don't, then we fine them.
Yeah.
Because it's absurd to spend this much time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like punching feathers, trying to get these characters to do what they're supposed to do. And there's no need of it.
But I'm really glad we got that CVO.
Yeah, no, that's a good step. The other thing that, having listened to the design review committee about massing and integration into neighborhoods, and then having had the long conversation with the Quinns in Lot 7 about, headlights and different elevations and all of that, it's probably something we need to sort of figure out if we can integrate into a review to look at sort of visual impacts, from cars, right? And I'm not sure we really sort of recognize the elevation changes that we were going to see in the new houses versus the old houses. And that might just be another sort of check item we ought to think about as we look at new subdivisions. And certainly, as the design review committee said, sort of look at developments as they integrate into the neighborhoods too, right? And sort of broaden the view beyond the property lines.
Yeah. Well, I think what happened, one of the things that happened with Blanchard, which resulted in all that fill, was all of those lots on the north side, they wanted to have walkout basements. So
Right.
they had to, kind of elevate everything up, including the road and the lots on the other side to a certain extent, to give them that, that depth to have the walkout
Mhm.
basement. And
Which,
I think
is...
you could ask for 3D modeling, possibly, if, I'm assuming
Yeah,
the
I think that
software
was
is
it,
out
right?
there.
Is that I'm not sure we had the sense, looking at the 3D view, of what this massing was going to look like, right, in the real world, if you will. And it's like, I think the design review committee said, is that, they didn't really recognize it till they saw it, right? And we need to get ahead of that somehow.
Yeah.
So we're not in the mode of, oh, we don't like it now that it's built, by that time it's too late, right? So,
Well, I think, we can all sit down at one of their meetings and make a list of things that they need to have in their that they don't, there isn't really even an application form for them.
Mhm.
So, I don't know if that's important, but to have a list of things that every applicant has to bring in, for a building of a certain size or, development of a certain size. And that may be something that you all adopt because they're kind of a creature of your,
yeah. I think it's, you have to be a little careful with that, in that you want, as Bill suggested earlier, that you want them to work with a developer initially and not have to have the developer spend a lot of time and money and effort in the initial sort of thinking about how they're going to develop something, right? So they're going to have these informal conversations before they even file something at the planning board, maybe, right? It's sort of a consultative conversation. So I think at that stage, there's probably a certain amount of information you need, but you don't need sort of like every I dotted and T crossed, so to speak. But that as you get to sort of a more formal review, there's probably a checklist that's worth going through.
well, maybe they should do more informal reviews and put it out there that they're willing to do that and look
Yeah.
at different options. I mean, with, not to keep going back to 93, 97, but when they did talk about that, there were different iterations of that. And possibly they could have, waited on that 3D modeling until the one that they really were going to work with. And then if they didn't like that, they could always go back to one of the other ones and see what that looked like and do a comparison. But
The problems
I think they need to, really focus on it.
the problems we experience is when something has come back to the board, and the decision has already been made by the ZBA through design review.
Yep.
And then when it comes back, and basically you've got a very limited ability to review and comment on that.
Right, particularly when they have foundations in the ground.
Yeah, well, that
So,
was-
so I think that we need to figure out how to properly have the planning board check off on it before it goes back to the ZBA. I'm not sure how to do
Okay.
that,
Okay.
but I think that's,
I
would
think
be,
it's a
or,
consultation. I think that's right. It's a consultation, right?
Yeah.
They've developed, sort of their input, but they should consult with us, and we should have the opportunity to provide additional commentary on what goes back to the ZBA, essentially.
but it also came back to haunt us on the accessory dwelling on Country Way, or
Garden.
Gardner, thank you. That it came back out, that if they'd been able to flip, that's the one where, if we'd been able to flip it, it would have worked out better for everybody. But yet, when it came to the board, it basically was pretty much decided what it was gonna look like.
Okay,
Right, 'cause they'd actually already
remember
built
which
it.
one.
They had built it.
They
It's,
built it, and it was going to be an exercise room or something,
Right.
and then it converted to something else,
Oh,
right?
okay,
Hmm?
okay.
3 Garden.
yeah, very garden.
It was over
Yeah.
the garage, right?
Yeah, and the
Oh,
garage
yeah.
was right on top of the next door neighbor.
Right.
Yeah. The
And
one
that
at the
should-
corner of Hadley and.
Right, and we won't go down that road,
Yeah.
because it never, whatever. I have a question. How is the drainage going on that 510 Country Way, or whatever it is, up by the Egypt garage? Has anything been said about that?
Drainage.
They built that massive house.
Oh, not the 529, 531? That one?
Yes.
We're going back and forth, getting the original drainage calcs to Paul Mirabito, and at first, Paul is going to have to get in touch with the first engineering firm, which was a firm called Scituate. He's got to get in touch with them and get the drainage calcs from them. We never got a CD, or we never got them electronically, so he's got to get them.
Yeah.
And that house is massive.
Oh, I know, there's 2 houses there, they're both massive.
And the driveway does go up and then comes back down again.
Yeah.
It's not flat.
Yeah. No,
It's not flat?
Not flat at all.
Okay, that's all my input.
I just had
Anything else?
one more little thing.
Lay it on us.
I just wanted to let you know that I've been working with Nancy Durfee on a coastal protection bylaw, and the purposes of this would be several. One is to bring all the FEMA requirements back into the zoning bylaw, which is the way a lot of towns have it. And it's a good way to control these things, some of the things that come up, like not storing things under the house and all sorts of issues, not having propane tanks that are not secured. There are all kinds of things that can come under it. One of the things that has been something that some of the top town officials have been very interested in has been having more control over both the velocity zone, where you get the 3-foot waves, and there's a limit of moderate wave action. There's a kind of a more vulnerable area in the 100-year floodplain, the regular 100-year floodplain, that we want to try and protect. Right now, Scituate has it so that practically the whole floodplain you can't build on. You can't build new, but you can improve and expand existing houses as much and as big as you want. And that's a problem, because when there's an emergency, if it's during a storm, emergency vehicles can't get down there. Like the Doherty case that we had when Bill was on the board. I don't know if there's anybody else that was left from that. But this, case that went up to the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. And a lot of it was based on just having too many people living in the flood zone. And I think that was what the judge really listened to. And that's also what, Tricia and some of the selectmen are really concerned about. Whether this would fly as far as town meeting is a big question mark, and we just don't know. But it seems like it's the right thing to do, to protect people and to protect the emergency people that go out there, emergency responders.
Well, now,
So I'm not sure, what is the...
Oh, so what's
what is the control? Yeah, I mean, what are you trying to accomplish there then? So limiting reconstruction?
Yeah, limiting expansions as well as new building.
Gotcha.
There would be more area where you could do new building, which you can't do now. But the floodplain and watershed protection district that we have, it doesn't really track completely with the FEMA flood zones. There are areas in the flood zone that aren't in that. There are areas of that aren't in the FEMA zone. So we get the two things, consistent.
How far down the road are you going to look? Are you looking at sea level rise?
I don't know if we're going to put that in the zoning or not, but that's part of the driver behind this, is to, protect the more vulnerable areas, so we're not overbuilding and we're not setting ourselves up for a disaster.
There's, I don't know if it's Oak Bluffs or Vineyard Haven or wherever on Martha's Vineyard, and I worked on a house down there, and the side of the house is right here, and the water's right there, okay? And it's on a bit of a bay, and the rule is you can fix the house inside, you can redo the shingles, you can do all of that maintenance and stuff, but you can't add on to it, you can't expand it, and if it is taken out in a storm, it's gone, and you cannot rebuild it. And I think that at some point, as difficult as this sounds, we have to really think about it. We really do. I mean, we have a house down on, what is it, Oceanside, that has been rebuilt 11 times?
Yeah.
11.
I know exactly the house.
And, you know, when is enough enough? 11 times on our dime.
Millions of dollars of flood insurance that have gone into that house.
To what extent?
Well, a lot of that probably won't change unless insurance changes, right? So, anyway, I don't think we're going to solve that.
No, we're
right
not
now.
tonight.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Thank you.
Trish's goal is to have it for the fall town meeting, so that's why I'm bringing it up now.
Okay, it would be good to make sure we see that, like, well in advance, of, like, you know, not a week before we have to have it approved
No.
kind of thing, you know, so.
Yeah, I think it would be by the end of June. Well, they're also working on the maps. The Applied Coastal Sciences, I think their name is, that it's the consultant that the town works with, you know, the most out of Woods Hole, is working on mapping this vulnerable A zone. That's, you know, the big task that he's got. So when we get that, then we'll understand where we're trying to regulate. And I would expect by the end of July, you know, we should have those maps, we should have the draft. It should have been around town hall and to you guys.
Okay. So I have Bill's motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.